Hey everybody, you're listening to Erico Batavia, a podcast about what it means to belong in Batavia, Illinois. I'm your host, Richard Clark, and I'm recording this episode with the one and only Tri-Cities Central chief, editor-in-chief, head honcho. That's
Publisher.
what you go by, is head honcho, right?
That's the official title.
Yeah. Sam Kraft. Sam, welcome to the podcast.
Happy to be back.
So what we're doing today is a fun little exercise where we decided to count down our top 5 stories. We each have top 5 stories that have the most energy, because Batavia is the city of energy.
A couple of these, the energy metaphor is quite literal, particularly with the one I'm going to start with.
Yes. So there will be a range of types of energy.
Yeah, I mean, basically, in terms of the news that's been reported throughout the year, what I saw as generating a lot of conversation around town, people caring about things like that.
So I didn't say this at the beginning, but people should know, in case they don't, that Tri-Cities Central is a newsletter that you run, and really at this point like a reporting outlet to some extent.
I'd call it a publication, yeah.
That's great. Yes, that's well said. You're doing full-fledged articles at this point. You're like going and reporting on things.
Yeah, when I started it a couple of years ago, it was primarily curation, listing events and finding information, curating it, and reporting it out. And I do a lot more original reporting now.
Well, we are going to start with you. What is your number 5 story with the most energy in Batavia, Illinois?
When I said it was literal, like I meant it. It's the data center project that I think came to the forefront over the summer, and it has been the subject of much debate over the past several months.
Yes. This was one of 2 stories, I would say, that snuck up on people. It's one of 2 where like that and their surveillance cameras, like those were 2 where the vote happened fairly quickly. And there were questions of like, why did that happen? Some of that I think I talked to the aldermen about in our alderman episodes that we've had so far. But I still think there's like some conversation to be had around like why it happened that way and what it, do you happen to know like what caused the rush? I didn't watch the actual city council meeting.
Well, it always starts prior to the city council meeting. So maybe the city council meeting itself felt rushed in the sense that you're talking about, but it has to work its way up through subcommittees. And then typically the discussion from what I have observed, the discussion in the committee of the whole meetings tends to be like a little longer and meatier and a little bit more debate in preparation for that city council meeting. So
that makes sense.
Yeah, I don't know. Perhaps it felt rushed at the city council point, but prior to that, there might have been more discussion.
Yeah, and I guess when I say that, I'm speaking both to my feelings and just what feels like as I talk to people, what the feelings of people in Batavia are. What I know is that talking to aldermen, like the surveillance camera thing, which we'll talk about later. Maybe I shouldn't talk about it, but I'll just say that was one where it wasn't as rushed as it seems. It's just that people weren't paying attention. This one happened pretty fast, like objectively, like from when we heard about it to when it happened. I still don't know how I feel about it. You know, I don't really know how to feel about it. I just know that it doesn't matter anymore. You know what I mean? It's kind of done and over. And so we'll see at this point.
And it's part of a national trend, too. We're not the only community dealing with a proliferation of enormous data centers.
And this is one of the things that actually is giving me more anxiety. It's not making me feel better because it's the way in which it's become a trend is a lot of angst, a lot of people having angst. And in fact, the week that vote, I think, went down, I happened to see a movie called Eddington, which situates a data center right in the center of the movie as like a harbinger of horrible things. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And it's very much metaphorical, but it still just gave me this uneasy feeling. So interesting story that I feel like very unsettled about in the literal sense.
Well, and you're not the only one. I mean, it's going to, according to the plan that was put in place, double Batavia's peak energy load. It's going to cost $500 million. I think one of the big points of contention when data came out around how much water is going to be required to run the data center, that really concerned a lot of people.
Yes.
Because it's not only the electric grid that's going to be under a lot of pressure from something like this. It's some other resources that we have as well.
So we'll have to pay attention to how, I guess when I say it's over, that part is not. How we handle that stuff will be important. Okay, my number 5 is what I have called in a previous episode, Paula passes the torch. I don't know like how many people in Batavia are like really tuned into this, but in my household, it was kind of a big deal because Jennifer goes to Paula's a lot. And also if you're like familiar with the landscape of downtown Batavia, Paula and Paula's in particular serves a really important function in that it's sort of like a haven for people to hang out and be in community with people that they feel safe with. And there were 2 things that I thought were really interesting about this. One is just on the face of it, she's moving on, and that's a big deal. That's a big change. But the other is that it's not shutting down. And in a year when we've seen a lot of things shutting down, I think that is important. And in my view, like really cool, because especially for a place that is about community, for something like that to just disappear is a real bummer and loss. And so there are a lot of reasons for Paula not to do that, not to pass on her business. And I think it was cool that she did.
Yeah, I feel like it's indicative of what the Batavia community and business community in particular is like.
Yeah.
Especially when you compare it to, I cover Batavia, Geneva, St. Charles, and kind of the surrounding area. And what makes Batavia unique, I think, is the interconnectedness. I mean, all the business communities have their own kind of camaraderie and level of interconnectedness, but Batavia is different in the sense that like some of the business owners share spaces with other ones. There seems to be like real friendships beyond just the business relationships, and I think that's probably part of the reason that you feel the way you do.
It's a really healthy tension between like cooperation and competition. I used to say that people don't really compete. That's not true. That can't be true. Like there's inherent, you got to choose where to be in space, and that is an implied tension. But I think there's a lot of like understanding that a rising tide really does float all boats. And we see that here. The person, so I didn't mention Amanda is taking over Paula's. She is also an entrepreneur, and it's just cool to see her like make that transition from like doing these other things and going into this. And that came from a business to business relationship, Can
you think of any other examples of rather than a business shutting down or just kind of wholesale selling to somebody else who changes the concept, like carrying on the same concept, but someone sort of adopts it like that?
Not like a brick and mortar local business. No, I can't off the top of my head.
The only one that I can compare it to right now, this earlier this year, All Chocolate Kitchen, which is like a gourmet coffee and chocolate and ice cream spot that's very popular, or was very popular in downtown Geneva.
Yeah.
I got a couple messages from folks just asking, would you know what happened to All Chocolate Kitchen? We went there on Saturday afternoon. It was closed. So I started looking into it, and they did kind of abruptly close, but announced shortly thereafter that one of their longtime baristas was going to take it over, change the name to, I believe it's now Coffee, Cones, and Cabernet. So it's a very similar concept, but she took it over, put her own spin on it. And I thought that was really cool. You kind of like to see that more so than, especially when it's a long-time family-run business that people have come to like love and identify with, to see it kind of transition that way.
I think so often when something shuts down, it's like the last gasp, and the last thing someone wants to do is give a crap about what happens after, frankly. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think they're done. Senioritis, but like a really depressing version of senioritis, right? I do think it's admirable to think in that direction as early as possible. Though I understand why you wouldn't. You know what I mean? There's all sorts of reasons not to. I did remember, though, that Limestone belonged to someone else, and I believe was sold to Leah and Joy back in the day. It was a different location and all of that stuff. And then the other one is the Popcorn Depot. Used to belong to someone else.
Popcorn Depot is a Batavia institution.
It's
been
is,
around
and
forever.
it sets. Maybe that's why we have this happening, because it sets the tone of that kind of cooperation. All right, what's your number 4?
I feel like it's a pretty seamless transition. The departure of Hearth and Hammer and the subsequent arrival of Warehouse 55. I feel like a lot of people loved Hearth and Hammer.
Yeah.
And had just anecdotally through folks that I've talked to locally have nothing but wonderful things to say about the owners and the business itself. And I think people really felt like there was going to be a gap that needed to be filled, not only with the products that they sold, but I feel like it was a true community gathering space. Not to sound corny, but that's like how it was described by a lot of people, and they felt like it was a huge loss when that went away. So
I have been thinking about this a lot. There's a few things to say about it. One is that it seems like the transition was good for the people who owned it, in the sense that they seem like they're doing things they wanted to do and haven't had time to do. You know what I mean? I know that Annie is writing and actually gonna write and publish a book, which
that's awesome.
Having heard what that book is, I'm so excited about it. I think you can find out information on her Substack or something, but I don't want to speak out of turn and get it wrong. But it's right in the center of my interest when it comes to literary fiction. So that's exciting. But the other thing is that I think that Hearth and Hammer was a bit of a victim of its own success, which is to say, when you think about what Hearth and Hammer was and sold, stuff's everywhere in Batavia now. They were really one of the first to sort of carry that kind of thing, which is like locally sourced, a lot of locally sourced things, Batavia-centric things.
Handmade, high quality, craft goods.
Yes. And that is... Talk about competition. It was everywhere. So I still think they were probably the primary place. I think they were the behemoth in that ecosystem, but they also it was not as easy as we are the place with this, because it really did start to be everywhere, I think.
Yeah. I mean, the general store vibe as well. I feel like people, when it's so easy to shop online and have the convenience of that, and even though it's impersonal, it's just fast and simple. Yeah. To be able to go somewhere where you not only know the people running the place, but you're probably going to run into someone that if you want, you can sit down and try one of the products, and it's more of an experience. And I feel like a lot of smaller businesses are going for that now. So you're therefore going to see more kind of competition around the vibe and the atmosphere more so than you might have in the past.
I will say, every year my family does a thing where we buy each other stocking stuffers. We draw each other's name out of a hat. We each have $25 to spend on that person. And we couldn't go to Hearth and Hammer. It was honestly weird. There was a gap, in my opinion, that was left, where I would have gone there and, looked at certain things or bought certain things that I really couldn't find elsewhere. So it's a bummer. But, have we talked about Warehouse 55?
No.
We should, because there's the flip side of that.
Yeah, they had a location in Aurora that essentially I think they just... I guess I don't know this for sure, but I'm assuming the Batavia space is a little bit bigger, which might be part of the reason that they moved over from Aurora. I know they also have a flagship store in Chicago that's pretty popular, but I have not yet had the chance to make it over to the Batavia location.
I went on the ribbon cutting day, and it is big. It is big. I don't know what it compares to the Aurora location, but it is bigger, I will say, than Hearth and Hammer was, because they're using some of the back rooms and offices as space. And it's big. It's dense. There are a lot of things in there. It's basically a museum. You could spend, it's more dense than a museum. There's more stuff there than a museum. You could spend a long time there just looking. Okay, well, my number 4 is Berkeley's. Is it Berkeley's or Berkeley?
I believe it was Berkeley.
Well, I'm going to call it Berkeley's. Sorry.
It was Berkeley Finer Foods.
Berkeley Finer Foods.
Or Berkeley's.
Closes. And there was the most stressful, inducing 2 weeks after that, where we didn't know what was going to happen. About one weekend, there were some rumors that someone had bought it or whatever and was going to just reopen. I guess pretty quickly after they closed, it was announced that someone was going to reopen. And it turned out to be Cinco de Mayo. And man, I couldn't be happier with this. So this is, again, a personal choice. I live walking distance from this place. And my kids used to go all the time, especially post 7-Eleven. It's like the one place we can all go and just buy things. And it's been really cool. Importantly, the guac and salsa is still excellent. That's all anyone cares about, I think. But they also have a lot of really cool deli options still, which I'm not like a buying things at the deli person, so I haven't done that. But they're also just like doing a thing that I really like when a grocery store does, which is like mixing things up a lot. There's like a lot of random new stuff to look at when you go, which I just like doing that. And I have been really pleased with the atmosphere and the vibe. More importantly, I think like it's a sort of a cultural mix-up. You know, it's a cultural shuffle. And for Batavia, most of Batavia is white, and this is owned by Latino people, and it's awesome. It feels different in a way that I really appreciate. Also, by the way, I think it's called Cinco de Mayo Plaza now.
For real?
That whole thing. If you go, the sign says Cinco de Mayo Plaza.
And if I'm not mistaken, Cinco de Mayo is an Aurora bakery.
Yes.
But
yes.
Was not a grocery store until they expanded into the Berkeley space.
That is correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Again, I haven't, because I don't live in Batavia, I haven't been over there and shopped there yet, but I'm so glad the space remained a grocery store. It's 65 years of tradition in that space right there. So I am curious. So you live very nearby. That's why you had the panic attack when you heard the news. Is that just because you were terrified of having to travel for your groceries, or is there something special about Berkeley that you were going to miss?
Yes, it's both. Selfishly, just as a regular old consumer, I hate having to drive across the bridge and into Randall Road to go get like anything of substance from the grocery store. I mean, admittedly, I think like a lot of people, I buy most of my groceries at like an Aldi situation, and then we get things we need in a pinch at the local grocery store. There's something about the quaintness of a local grocery store that you just appreciate. And you just don't want a huge swath of community without a place to buy food, basic food.
Absolutely. I mean, I can tell you, living in Geneva, one thing that I miss a lot is the lack of any sort of grocery store downtown. So I live somewhat near, walkable to the downtown area, but there really isn't anywhere that I could walk for fresh produce, or for example, I'm addicted to in-shell peanuts, and I can't find those anywhere within walking distance, which is a shame.
That's something I'll be looking for in the next year is, will it feel like it's downtown? Because I think what we need to do is figure out how to connect the Berkeley's Plaza to the downtown thing.
It is downtown geographically, but I understand what you're saying when it doesn't feel like it is. I mean, my experience with the building was, I think it was called Amstead's when I was a kid, and we would, be delinquent, middle-aged students. We would hang out, walk around downtown and eat at the McDonald's and just generally do nothing productive. But we, if we're looking for food or something like that, we would wander in there. Yeah. So that's partially, there's a little bit of nostalgia there for that being a grocery store. I think prior to Berkeley, it was called Waltz.
Oh, okay.
And that opened originally in 1961. So that's where the kind of string of grocery stores in that space started.
Interesting. That's cool. What's your number 3?
My number 3 is more because it's timely than necessarily it took up a ton of energy over the past year, but it's the proposed new restaurant project for the former Thorabella space downtown.
Yeah. And before Thorabella's, it was?
Gaetano's.
Gaetano's, that's right. Yes.
And yeah, the last time I dined there was Gaetano's actually, and it really was excellent. It was excellent food, great service. Yeah. Always enjoyed going there with the family on special occasions. So I know.
And yet, this location has been cursed, it seems like.
It does.
It doesn't seem like anything can stay open there. Who's this brave soul that is opening this location, or that wants to?
It's the owner of the Goat down the street. He also owns Art House in Aurora. I'm probably going to butcher his name, but it's Chad Grevenitis, I think is probably how you pronounce the last name. I haven't heard it spoken. But I know that this project is more than just kind of taking over the space and repurposing what's already there. They're planning some pretty major upgrades to, HVAC, to structural changes, plumbing, like all that stuff. There's a dangerous staircase, I believe, that they're in discussions of fixing. So it's more of a complete overhaul of the property than it is someone just sliding in.
Well, and the Goat is kind of great. It's like really incredible as a restaurant and seems to be really successful. So that makes me excited about the possibility, right, of something else. Hopefully it doesn't compete with themselves, but I think, or maybe they just move over there. I don't know.
So I was listening to the discussion during the city council meeting when he presented, and he actually brought that up and said there might be a little bit of overlap with Goat, like they'll serve a burger at the new place, but it obviously won't be specializing in burgers. So
got it.
I think he described it as like a little bit more elevated than what the Goat is.
Interesting.
He described it to he compared it to Barrel and Rye in Geneva.
Yeah.
Also brought up Maize and Mash and Glen Ellen as a couple of like semi-comps.
That is cool. I'm excited about that. It's like a date spot.
Honestly, it's something that Batavia doesn't have currently.
Yes.
Over in recent years, I feel like a lot of interesting new restaurants and bars and breweries and whatnot have really livened up the downtown area, but it does feel like it's missing a concept like that.
It's funny because when you said that, I was like, well, the Goat is actually the most upscale in some ways location in downtown Batavia. So it's interesting, but it makes sense that they would be the ones to do the next upscale.
I mean, and when you think about the comparisons that I just mentioned, like those aren't quite as upscale as like what Gaetano's was, probably. So there is, I still think, a happy medium there that it's well suited for the space down there.
True. My number 3 is the surveillance cameras. So if you've been walking around downtown and looking up, you may have noticed that you're being watched. This is, to me, this was a jarring and unnerving development in 2 moments. One was when the vote happened, which I was unaware of, which I talked about. Fine, my fault. I wasn't paying attention. I'll accept it. Then when they went up, I was just like, I don't like the vibe here. You know what I mean? Just my opinion. The thing that I don't know is like what's being done with these. Like there is that thing of like, am I being watched? Who's watching this?
So it's privacy concerns that are your main.
It's vibe concerns. I don't think that deeply about it, right? I'm not like the most privacy oriented person in the world, clearly, where I say too much on a podcast. But I just don't like the vibe of having surveillance cameras everywhere. I don't know.
No, I mean, you're certainly not alone in that viewpoint. I know that when the discussion was being had among Batavia officials and whatnot, like that was a common theme.
Yeah.
I think the counterpoint to that, when looking back at the discussions that were being had, was, well, this day and age, we're kind of being surveilled whether we like it or not at almost all times anyway.
Yeah, I hate that argument so much. I hate it so much because it's like, okay, but like you can say that about so many things. This is happening no matter what anyway, and so our city is going to do it? Like, how does that follow? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The other thing for me is like, Batavia is just not that unsafe already. It is a pretty safe town, I guess is the better way of putting it. I just didn't feel the need for this.
So it's almost like now, for lack of a better term, you're weighing the public safety component with the creepy vibes component. And the creepy vibes overwhelm the public safety?
Yes.
Is it a little off balance in that sense?
Yes. Yeah. And it's bigger picture like concerns about surveillance and privacy, and I don't know.
Absolutely. I mean, even when the policy is, as I believe it is in this case, that there's a very select few officials who are able to access and view the recordings, and I think they get deleted after a certain amount of time.
Okay, that's nice.
And those types of things, but those types of things are stated at the forefront, and then everyone kind of forgets about them. And like, where's the? And you know what? There could be some really stringent policies in place that require transparent reporting on that type of thing and whatnot. But how many people are going to come out and ask for that after the fact? It feels like since the discussion was had over the summer, it's kind of become an afterthought.
Yes. Yeah, maybe. I mean, who knows? I don't know. What was your number 2?
So I lumping a few stories into one point, which is the demolition of downtown buildings and structures.
The demolition of downtown Batavia.
Yeah, downtown Batavia getting torn down.
Take it all down. Yeah.
I would say that the most, not necessarily controversial, but the one that sparked the most debate and discussion was probably the historic tin shop.
Yeah.
On the east side, over by River Street, across from Pal Joey's.
Yeah.
Obviously wasn't in great condition. I believe it was being used for storage for the last several years. Yeah. But when it's a building from the 19th century and it has, played a key role in Batavia's history, there's always going to be folks that are keen to preserve that in some way. And I know that the plan was to salvage some of the materials and whatnot. What happens to those after the fact, I'm also not super sure about. But ultimately, the removal of the building is going to lead to, I believe it's public restrooms and a sort of public plaza in that space. So
yeah. Can you read the list? Because the list of demolitions that are happening that came out this year over time, to me, is like really striking to hear listed out.
It is. It seems like a sort of odd in terms of the timing of all of these demolitions kind of happening at once. So the other one is the Ethan Allen building, which I believe used to be Hubbard's Home Furnishings. It was Hubbard something. I might be getting the name of that wrong. And a variety of other businesses in the past. That's next to the United Methodist Church on Route 31, across from the gas station. That hasn't been torn down, but it went through the process of a public hearing, and the decision ultimately was to eventually tear that one down. There's also the chimney near Pal Joey's on the east side, which is over 100 years old, 110 feet tall, I believe, and deteriorating rapidly. So that one was urgent. Like, that had to get pushed through the public hearings pretty quickly.
Safety thing.
Because it's a safety thing.
Yeah.
And the preservation groups were pushing to have, I think, a certain portion of that chimney salvaged because of its historical significance. But I think the whole shebang is coming down.
That was kind of sad.
Yeah, and then the last one that I can recall seeing is it's essentially an outbuilding to the Batavia United Methodist Church.
Okay.
Not access from Route 31, but access from the other side. And it's actually the former craft plumbing shop in downtown Batavia. So my family business.
Oh yeah.
My grandfather started the company, I think, out of his garage, and then eventually bought that building in I have it written down when he bought it in 1970. Okay. So
did you spend a lot of time in that building?
As a kid, I remember spending time. I used to work for the plumbing company, but not until they moved to a different location on First Street. So my family owned the building from 1970 to 94.
Okay.
I was talking to my dad about it. I guess my grandfather, Carl, bought it in 70. Then him and a buddy, his buddy was, I think, a concrete guy who owned an excavator. He just brought him over, and because my grandpa was a plumber, he just hooked the building up to city sewer, city water. And back then, didn't ask for a permit, didn't have to go through any rules or regulations, just got it done in a day and he was done. So I think
the good old days.
That encapsulates how things have changed a little bit in the last 50, 60 years.
That's crazy. Yeah, the list is crazy because it's like 4 different things, all sort of in and around downtown. Is that a lot in a year?
It feels like it is, because when I've covered a lot of these debates, should we or should we not tear down historic structures, and I feel like, at least from what I've seen in Geneva and St. Charles, the preservation typically wins out. At least over the last several years, that really seems like it's been the case. But again, like when I'm thinking, there's the blacksmith shop in Geneva, where there's actually a public hearing about that tomorrow. But that's been a years long saga that I could probably dedicate an episode to. The house of a former judge in St. Charles that ultimately I think was saved this past year. So yeah, it's just interesting. But again, these structures in Batavia, while they're historic, maybe they aren't the same level of historic as some of these other places.
Yep. My number 2 is, would you believe we had a mayoral race this year in Batavia? That was early this year in Batavia. We had Mayor Shelkey ran against Tom Connolly for mayor. I interviewed both of them. I really enjoyed doing that. But the race was surprisingly close, I think. I don't know if it's surprisingly close, but it was relatively close.
Yeah, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I feel like it was in like the 53-47 realm. Which was, I think closer than most people expected.
Yeah, and so I thought that was really interesting. I don't know how much else I can say about that other than it was pretty interesting. And it will be interesting to see what happens next time. Insofar as like, well, does Mayor Shelkey run again? And if not, what happens? Whoa, will that be interesting? And if so, what happens? That could be interesting.
What did you learn about one candidate or the other or both from the interviews that you feel like probably wasn't publicly available information prior to that?
I will say it was an extremely polite race. You essentially had the same dynamic as you've had in the past on the national level, which is sort of like young person with less experience going up against an older person with more experience, and the trade-offs that you get with both of those. And this could not have been as clearly mapped onto that. Mm-hmm. But no one was really articulating any of that. You know what I mean? No one's articulating like the negative pieces of that, to the point where I don't even feel comfortable doing it because I would be the first.
That's so interesting in this political climate that's been
fueled
by the polarization in national politics for not only the candidates but sort of the community vibe to remain so polite here. And
it was a Midwest nice election is what it was.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And I don't know how I feel about that, because I mean there's some things that probably needed to get hashed out and just didn't, probably. But you know, there were also people paying attention and voters who knew what they were voting for. So I don't know.
From my 30,000 foot view, it did feel non-controversial. Like there wasn't a whole lot of contentious debate as far as I could tell. Whereas there was a little bit more of that in the Geneva mayoral race. Yeah. I was also surprised with St. Charles. St. Charles felt very similar to what you're talking about.
Okay, interesting.
And again, I don't live in St. Charles. This is more around like just chatting with people and following the race, but it seemed like very respectful, I guess is the term that I would use.
You know, the thing that occurs to me is the alderperson race might have been a little bit more contentious. Maybe not, because it just wasn't as public. But like the thing I wonder about is whether people really respect our mayor so much that you can't really come for the king in that way. You know what I mean? I think there's so much, like, I'm not saying he's untouchable or something, but I think that he has been so nice to people that they feel bad about being less than nice to him.
Like they kind of owe him some loyalty due to the decades.
Man,
of
I really
public
hate that
service.
word loyalty there, but I think
I feel like that's what you were describing, though, sort of.
maybe, but I don't think that means they voted for him or even didn't campaign against him. I think it meant that they didn't campaign negatively.
There's like a deference there.
Yes, that's the word.
Okay,
that's the word.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So anyway, I think it told us something about Batavia. I think it's really interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice
cool.
people.
What is your number one? And this is maybe where,
I was gonna, it's unfortunate that we kind of have to veer into unpleasant territory, but this story
was huge
and sucked a lot of energy out of the proverbial room in the last couple of months, and that's the investigation into the Batavia chiropractor who allegedly committed some pretty serious crimes in terms of recording patients, both adults and children, without their clothes on in the practice. So that's I imagine all the listeners are familiar to a certain extent with the case, but he has since been sued by, I believe, 4 of the families in various lawsuits, with several more probably expected as the case progresses. He's still in jail right now. Kane County actually set up a dedicated website where you can visit from time to time. They'll be updating it with new information as the case progresses. So I can't recall the exact URL, but if you Google Batavia chiropractor case Kane County, I'm sure you'll be able to find it.
Yeah. And just a visceral moment in Batavia, right? Like being on the ground here, the first thing is the Facebook stuff. It's everywhere on Facebook. And there are multiple people sharing about it who are sharing it because they know people who went there and want them to know. Or they're just saying, if you happen to go. Basically everyone, this really was like probably the most, not even probably. This was like by a long shot the most popular chiropractor in the area. And they were really good at marketing. I remember seeing them everywhere. And embedded into the community in a really specific way, like sponsoring at all of the community events and had booths at every community event and that kind of thing. And so it really was like this moment where there was a big hole blown into the middle of the community. So the Facebook posts were the first thing, but then, there's just this building that's shuttered immediately. And that day of or a few days after, there were helicopters from the news just like cycling around. It's a weird vibe.
It's impossible to get it out of your mind when you're driving past the shuttered storefront and choppers are drawing attention to it. Yeah.
And it's like a main road, it was weird.
The social media, obviously, if you're on Facebook or some of the other platforms, the comments, it can be hard to escape those. I know that even beyond like online, like in the first few days after the news of this came out, I believe the Kane County prosecutors in charge of the case received like over 1,000 phone calls from people who either were patients or had some sort of information that they wanted to share. That it's like the impact on the community is enormous.
And the thing that I thought about a lot, I think this is underrated, is the degree to which that sort of communal but private trauma can just wreck a community. Like a lot of people experiencing the same thing at the same time, but in a private way that they're not talking to everyone about. I don't think we've seen the outcome of that yet. It makes me nervous, to be totally honest. So I have no conclusions other than we should be kind to each other and watch out in the next year, because I think some people and some people's kids were like severely violated in a way that is hard to process. And that doesn't just happen and go away. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's not something that you can just turn a blind eye to and hope, once the news cycle wears out, just move on with your life, especially if you were somebody that was directly impacted by what happened, or if you know someone who was directly impacted by what happened. But one thing that was encouraging to see was that shortly after the news of this broke, that various organizations and churches and whatnot held public, I guess, like trauma or just somewhere for the people that were traumatized by it, where they could go and heal and be with other people and feel supported. So hopefully that type of thing continues. I made sure when I came across any instance of that happening to share it in my publication so that folks would see it and know that they could seek that out if they needed it. So, hopefully, the community, Batavians are good at supporting Batavians. So I like to think that there's a safety net out there for people.
Yeah, well said. My number one is less of a downer in my opinion, which is that the city council passed an ordinance that is meant to bar ICE from using city property for
immigration enforcement.
Enforcement. Yes, thank you. This was a big deal, again, personally for me, because it felt right in line with sort of the mission of this podcast, which is around belonging and making sure that everyone in Batavia feels like they belong. And I have felt for a while that what ICE is doing is keeping that from happening. And so it was important to me that we did something about that. And so I attended a pretty packed city council meeting. It was a bit life-changing for me just to be in that room that was so full and full of so many people, not only like sort of activist minded, but it was less that actually. I think what was most impactful for me was that these were people who just cared about their community and the people around them. To the point you were making earlier, it was literally people talking about, like, I did not expect people talking about other people. I expected people talking about politics or policy. What people were talking about was their family or their classmates or their friends, like really in really specific terms. And importantly, these were Batavians. 2 people were there speaking against the ordinance. I think they were from Naperville. I know at least one was. And so, and I know there are Batavians here that don't agree with the ordinance, probably people listening to this podcast who don't. But I think what I want to spotlight is the attitude and the sort of mindset behind those opinions in the room, which were very much for not only the people, but sort of maintaining this Batavian mindset of like, we're going to radically protect the people who are here and help them know that they belong no matter what. And there was a lot of references to like what Batavia has done during the time of slavery and just connecting those things, which I should do a whole episode on. I should talk to Kate from the Depot Museum at some point about that, because that's just waiting to be mined, I think. But it was an incredibly inspiring moment for me. And importantly, like a moment that felt like the culmination of a question I've been asking, which is Batavia really that?
Yeah, it feels like what you're describing too is one of the more powerful elements of it, is the fact that the people showing up weren't the people that you see coming to share public comment at other city meetings and whatnot. They might not be the people you would expect to get in front of a room and share their opinion. Yeah. They might even be like a wallflower, for lack of a better term, but they felt inspired to get up and be a part of a little movement in town because it was that important to them.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's interesting with the sort of inspiration behind your podcast and the conversations that have been happening in Batavia and several other communities for that matter. I know Elgin and Aurora have pretty much enacted the same policy. Yeah. It's not so much, at least from what I've observed. It is about the policy itself, but in a larger sense, it seems about the message that it's sending the community.
Yes.
And particularly those people in the community who may or may not feel marginalized by these policies.
Right. Which is admittedly like an argument against it. And it's an argument that did come up, which is this is grandstanding or whatever. And it's unenforceable. But frankly, I don't care. Let's put it out there. And if they want to break the law, then they can. If they want to break the local law, then they can.
I mean, in my understanding, it basically is it's a slight expansion of the existing Illinois Trust Act.
That's
just to incorporate city properties and some city services that extend beyond law enforcement. So, I guess I understand when you describe those two viewpoints. I can understand why it would be interpreted either way.
Yes, totally. Awesome. Well, those were our top 10, our top 5 each. Thanks for listening, everyone. Send us it feels like I should do this. Send us your favorite. Send us your biggest stories of the year. And I don't know, I'll put them somewhere.
If enough people respond, I would love to compile those and kind of report it out. That'd be fun.
That's a great idea. All right. Thanks, everyone, for listening, and we'll see you in 2 weeks. Thanks for listening to Area Code Batavia. We'll be back in 2 weeks with another episode. If you know someone who would love to hear this podcast, please share it with them. Word of mouth is the best way to grow this community and help more people feel like they belong in Batavia, Illinois. Area Code Batavia is produced by Area Code Audio. It's hosted and produced by me, Richard Clark, with additional production help from Jennifer Clark.